how to make a 3D pumpkin cake topper. Hi guys, it's Karolyn. I am back with another video, and if this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. And if you want to see the different tips and tricks and ways that I bake and decorate cakes, then hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you can get notified whenever I release a new video. So like I said, I am making a 3D pumpkin for an adorable pumpkin patch themed cake, and I want to show you how I do that. So if you want to see how I make this adorable, cute, and simple pumpkin cake topper, then just keep on watching. First we have to make the Rice Krispies. So I have a bunch of stuff. I have I have a glass bowl to melt the marshmallows in. I have marshmallows, some Crisco, some cornstarch. I have a 5-inch cake pan here because the top tier of the cake I'm putting this on is 5 inches, so I want to make sure that I make it the correct size, and I'm going to use this as my guide. I have this half sports ball pan from Wilton, which I always use when I try to make round things out of Rice Krispies. I will show you what I do. And I have some Rice Krispies and a cutting board. So what I'm going to do, take a little paper towel, dip it in the shortening, and basically coat the whole bowl with the shortening so the marshmallows don't stick. I know there's precise measurements. There's actually, on the box of every Rice Krispies, there's a recipe. You can follow this recipe and do it how they want it. They add butter. I don't add butter when I do cake decorating Rice Krispies. So I just do marshmallows and Rice Krispies, but I eyeball it. So I'm not going to be able to really give any measurements. But this is a 12-ounce bag of marshmallows, and I'm going to use about 8 ounces of it, looks like. And then I'm going to pop this in the microwave for about 90 seconds to melt the marshmallows. They actually ended up being in the microwave for 80 seconds. So I have a spatula. I'm just going to mix here. And then add the Rice Krispies a little bit at a time. You have to find your happy medium of having, you don't want too little Rice Krispies. It's going to be too marshmallowy. Is that even a word? And then too much Rice Krispies is not, it's not going to stick together. So add a little at a time, stir, and then keep adding until you get the right consistency. So it was about 1.5 cups. Now you can see if I try to make Rice Krispie treats out of this, it's too marshmallowy. Got to add a little more. Another 1.5 cups. Still a little marshmallowy. I'm just going to add a little more, like 1/4 cup. Perfect. This is the cake that I'm making without the middle tier. This is a design that I did before. So I'm doing the pumpkin on the top. So it's going to look like this, just to show you. Take your paper towel and grease the inside of the half sports ball pan. My hands are clean. Well, except for that marshmallow on there. My hands are clean. I did wash them. They're clean. Add your Rice Krispies into the half sports ball pan. I usually overfill it because we're gonna condense it down. Now I'm gonna take some Crisco in my hands so the Rice Krispies won't stick. And I have this comes in the sports ball pan, so you can rest it on there. And I'm just going to push all the Rice Krispies down into the pan. And now I'm going to push down on one side and scoop it out. Ah, there, so much easier. I don't know why I do that. That's not a necessary step if you just want to try to get it together in a ball, but I just always do that. Now, I have my picture here. So the pumpkin is kind of tapered at the bottom and wider at the top, like pumpkins are, right? So I have a little cornstarch, sprinkle it on the counter so the Rice Krispies don't stick to the counter. And I'm going to try to start to shape it by looking at this picture and trying to make it tapered at the bottom, wider at the top. So a lot of times I hold it in my hand, bang it a little bit to get the bottom a little flat. And then, since we want it wider at the top, you just have to keep manipulating it, rolling it up into a ball. I'm going to taper it at the bottom, so I'm going to roll it on the counter and try to get it smaller at the bottom, wider at the top. So you just have to play around with it to make sure it starts to look like a pumpkin. Pumpkins are kind of flat on the top, right? And this is where the stem is going to go. And we're just going to get the general shape. So when this dries or when it cools down, you're going to be able to mold it into a better shape. So just so you have the basic shape, wider at the top, tapered at the bottom. And then put it on top. And that looks like it's going to be pretty good. It's going to be the whole size of the top tier. I can actually taper this in a little more. Good. So now I'm going to get a little bit of more cornstarch on the bottom so it doesn't stick to the cutting board. And I'm just going to set this aside for probably an hour or two until you can handle it and it holds its shape. So the marshmallow is going to cool and it'll dry hard. Now I'm going to color the fondant orange. I have marshmallow fondant here. I can link my recipe on how I make my fondant below. I pop this in the microwave for about 25 seconds so it can be soft and pliable and easy to work with. Like always, you'll see in all my videos, I always add a little bit of Tylose powder to my fondant when I'm working with it. It helps it set up harder, kind of like gum paste, and makes it easier to work with. A little bit goes a long way. So maybe that was like 1/4 teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon of Tylose. Take a little bit of Crisco, rub it on the counter so the fondant doesn't stick, and then knead all that together. Now I want to color the fondant. I have orange and brown here. I love AmeriColor coloring, and also this Alan Tetriel brand, which he shut down his website. I'm so upset. Stupid Corona ruins everything. I loved Global Sugar Art, but I still like to use AmeriColor brand as well. So any brown and orange. If you add just orange, it's gonna look bright orange, like child orange. The brown will offset it a little bit and make it more neutral. So add some orange and a little bit of brown, and then knead that together. Using Crisco, I usually try to take some out of the container and put it on the countertop because my fingers are going to get stained and I don't like sticking them back in the container. And I just want to add a little more orange to this and brighten it up a little bit. So you just want to get it to the color that you want. So finding your happy medium, why do I keep saying happy medium? Your desired combination of orange and brown to get it to the hue that you want, if you will. And here you go. Here's a nice fall colored orange. Now this has been out for about 90 minutes and it is more solid and easier to handle. I have a microplane here and I'm just going to file the bumps off of the Rice Krispies the whole way around. When I file, it does distort the shape a little bit, so I'm just going to roll this back into the shape that I want. So I'm pressing down towards the bottom to keep the bottom tapered and just reshaping it with my hands to get that pumpkin shape back. So wider at the top, tapered at the bottom. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect because pumpkins are not perfectly round. I like to wipe off the counter because sometimes the crumbs from shaving the Rice Krispies gets on the counter. And I don't want to roll my fondant on that. So as always, I'm going to keep saying my hands are clean. I just washed my hands. Just make sure you're working with clean hands. I have some buttercream here. I can link my American buttercream recipe below. And what I do, take the Rice Krispies and get some buttercream in your hands and just wipe it on. Now you want a thin coating of buttercream on here. If it's too thick, the fondant is going to slide all around on it. If it's too thin, you're going to be able to like see the imperfections in the Rice Krispies through the fondant. So again, you have to find your happy medium. Okay, I'm going to get the excess off. Set this aside, or get the excess icing off my hands. And then I'm going to smooth out the icing with some water in my hands. Now I have the Rice Krispies on a cutting board, and I have a turntable that has a non-skid pad underneath it. The non-skid pad helps prevent everything from sliding around while you're working with it. Set that aside. My marshmallow fondant, if you find that it has stiffened up, you can pop it in the microwave for like 10 to 15 seconds to warm it up so it's more pliable. And then just knead it together and roll it out, and we're going to cover the Rice Krispies. So whenever I roll out with fondant, I sprinkle down some cornstarch, get a little bit of the cornstarch on top, and then I'm going to roll out in different directions. Keep lifting the fondant, moving it around, sprinkling cornstarch underneath it as you move it so it doesn't stick to the countertop. And now I'm just going to lift the fondant on top. I'm going to cut the extra fondant off, just makes it a little easier to work with. And now I can smooth this down. So I'm going to start at the top. If there's a hole in the top or a bubble in the top, you can pop it because we're going to put a stem there. You're not going to see it. And then just pulling the fondant out at the sides and smoothing it down with your other hand. I do have a video where I show you how I smooth a cake with fondant. I can link that as well. So pulling the fondant out at the bottom and then smoothing it down, trying to make sure that there's no wrinkles at the bottom. Now the best part about this is that pumpkins are naturally lumpy. So if you have some lumps and bumps in your fondant, it's okay. It kind of makes it look a little more authentic. Take your pizza cutter and cut off the excess. And now what I like to do is take a little piece of fondant to smooth the fondant. Take a bunch of fondant in your hand, I dip it in a little cornstarch, wipe it off with my palm, and then smooth it over the fondant to just smooth everything down. It makes it easier to smooth with a piece of fondant than a fondant smoother. Now there are pieces sticking out at the bottom. I'm going to cut those off as the fondant stiffens. I can make it a little cleaner. Good, so now I'm going to take my Dresden tool. This is one of my favorite tools. I use it all the time. One end is pointy, one end is flat. I'm going to use the flatter end and the angle to make line impressions for the pumpkin lines, starting at the bottom and coming all the way up to the top. They don't have to be perfectly spaced because, again, pumpkins aren't perfect. So just put it in at the bottom and come up to the top in the middle, and do that the whole way around. So I'm trying to draw a straight line up, don't curve it around. So maybe I'll make some closer together and then do one a little further apart. And then I'm just going to go over those lines I made again, just to refine them. Make sure you're using the curved part and don't use the point because you're going to poke a hole in the fondant. Nice. And now I'm going to set this aside to dry, probably for a couple hours, maybe overnight. I want the fondant to be stiff, so when I handle it, I'm not going to put any fingerprints in the fondant. So just leave it out, room temperature. You don't have to refrigerate it. Leave it out so the fondant can get hard. This has been setting up for a couple hours, and I can touch the fondant without putting any impressions in it, so now I'm ready to continue. I want to cut this little extra pieces off the bottom, so I'm just going to carefully angle my pizza cutter to get off the excess. Why am I talking so slow? It's like the words are coming out not fast. So if you color this, it's going to add some dimension. You can just leave it this way. That is perfectly fine. I always like to either airbrush or add a little bit of petal dust to my decorations. It really brings life to it and makes it look more real. There are two options. If you don't have an airbrush, I will show you the option of using dusts first. Now these are petal dusts. I got these at Global Sugar Art. Global Sugar Art is no longer in existence. He is selling some things on Amazon. I can try to find colors similar to this and link them below. What I have is chocolate, dark chocolate, and terracotta. Terracotta is kind of like, you know, like an orangey, which really matches that orange that I use in the pumpkin. So I already put a little bit on a plate. I also have black and green here for other decorations for this cake. And what you would want to do if you are using the dust, I like to take just a little bit, make sure I'm in frame, okay. Take a little bit, I'll mix some of the colors together, the chocolate and the dark chocolate, tap the brush, and then you can start to color in the lines, which is really gonna start to bring out, it's gonna bring some dimension to it. And you don't have to be perfect. A lot of times I just slop this color on and it ends up looking really good. Right? So you can go around and do that in all of the crevices. You can even go ahead and add some terracotta and just, it's going to be so slight because it's very similar to the color of the pumpkin already, but just adding a little more color that way. So if you don't have an airbrush, just use this dust technique and you can really bring some life to the pumpkin. If you do have an airbrush, I have this on the turntable with a piece of non-skid pad like I did earlier, so I can easily rotate this as I'm airbrushing it. This is by Cake. I've used this one for years, and I have this Americolor chocolate brown that I'm going to use. A little bit goes a long way with this. Most of the time when I'm using my airbrush gun, I don't even pull back the trigger because a little bit of spray comes out when I'm not pulling this back, and I usually just use that spray to spray because I find if I pull the trigger back, it's just like way too much. So I always keep a paper towel in my hand when I'm airbrushing. This stuff stains your hands really bad, just like edible image ink. And I'm going to have to mute the video when I'm doing this because this is super loud. But I'm just going to turn my nozzle down. So this is, the spray is all the way up. And yes, this is a little dirty from last time I used it. I still have to wipe it down. I didn't wipe down the counter. No judgment. Sometimes when you're baking, like, things just, cornstarch gets places. And I didn't feel like cleaning up before I started the video. So I'm just going to turn the nozzle down a little bit. And then put some of this, a couple drops of the brown in here. And I'm going to get level, not really pulling back this trigger, and just really filling in the lines, each of the lines. And then I'm just going to go around and just move the gun and bring some dimension to the pumpkin, getting it a little more brown in some areas. Okay, so I'm going to have to mute the video as I'm doing this because it's going to be loud. And I have it like on middle pressure. That's not using any of the trigger. See, there's still some coming out. And then, as always, I'm going to rinse this all out in hot water and run really, really hot water through here while I pull the trigger back to completely clear this out. And now for the final part, I'm going to make the stem. I have some marshmallow fondant here. This is a mixture of leaf green, olive green, and a little bit of black that I mixed together with Tylose, like always. I have a little bamboo skewer. I like these better than toothpicks because they're a little longer. These are like 4 inches long. So I'm going to stick this in the top. I like to have the pointy, I guess I'll have the pointy side up. I'm going to stick this in the top so it'll hold the shape of the stem. Rip off a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of Crisco on my hands so it doesn't stick. Clean hands, like always. Knead this together. Okay, so when I make a stem, I'm going to roll it up into a ball. And then I'm going to kind of put it down on the, move this, on the countertop and start to get it into a little point at the top so my hands are on an angle. And that way it's coming to a point. Now look, see these ugly lines in here? Me no likey. I don't like when it looks like that. So what I like to do is start to fold the fondant over itself, right? And when you want to get it into a ball, you want to get all the ugly folds down to the bottom. I'm folding everything down to this point down here, right? So there's less wrinkles in your stem. Bring it to a point and just rip that off. Now you don't have that, so roll it into a ball. Do the same thing. Hands on an angle to get it started. I have a little bubble here. This is going to annoy me. So I'm just going to pop that. All right. So what I'm trying to do is have a base here, which is going to sit on the pumpkin. And then I want to get this kind of long so I can wind it around. So like I just did, I put this down on the toothpick so I could see. This is a pretty good size. I kind of like to pinch it at the bottom to flatten it out a little bit so it's going to sit more flush with the pumpkin. Try not to pinch too hard so you don't put your fingerprints all in there. And now just really rolling out the top to get it long so we can wind it and it'll look really pretty. I have a little bit of water on a paintbrush and just paint the bottom all the way to the edges with the water. And then what I like to do is try to find the front of the pumpkin. Like, what part do I like that looks the best? What's the most symmetrical? What am I gonna wanna look at from the front of the cake? And I think I like this section the most. So this is gonna be the front of the pumpkin. So I'm gonna find, this is gonna be the front of the stem. So slide that down the skewer and try to press it down so it's adhered to the pumpkin. And then you just kind of want to make a curly cue here. Bending it down, and then gonna wind it just to make like a little curl. Just to give it a little character, if you will. And here's the front, so I want you to be able to see the curl from the front. I really want this to come to a point. So you can make this any color. I know when you get pumpkins, a lot of time they're like a tan, but I'm using tan as the color of the wood on the cake, so I wanted to keep it green. I've seen people do brown. You can do whatever you want for the color. And I just use a little bit of water just to get it to stick. And voila! There is your Rice Krispie pumpkin ready to go on your cake. All right, here's the cake, so adorable. I have a little bit of buttercream on this spatula. I'm just gonna put in the middle, not too much, because if you put too much, then the pumpkin isn't gonna sit flush. But this is gonna help it just stick to the top. Then I got these skewers. These are actually 8-inch ones. I want to use these instead of the 4-inch ones because they'll go down further into the cake. Just take your pumpkin, pointy end up. Sometimes you have to twist so you don't ruin the decoration. Okay, now these are a little long. And I took my snips and snipped the end off, so because the skewers were a little too long. Stick it in the cake. And then I just want to manipulate the curly because it moved a little bit as I moved the pumpkin. Get a little more water underneath so it stays in place. And there's your pumpkin cake topper. You can also, that was so loud. I'm sorry, I was screaming. But you can also make it into a jack-o'-lantern and cut out your triangle and eyes and face and whatever. But it's pretty simple, and I hope you like it. So here you go. Here is your adorable little pumpkin cake topper for your cake. Gonna set this down. I'm working with a ring light now, and whilst it is nice that you can finally see me, all I see is a bright circle. But anyway, who cares about that? Okay, so I use that technique all the time when I'm doing Rice Krispie treats. Especially if it's in a ball, I do it in that half Wilton sports ball pan. And you want to make sure you set it and then shave off all the bumps. I saw that tip somewhere, I can't remember where, but when I saw like, oh duh, grate off the stupid bumps and then your Rice Krispie decorations aren't so lumpy. It makes total sense. What else do I want to say about this? I said this earlier, I do love making these pumpkins because pumpkins are naturally bumpy and lumpy and imperfect. So even if your fondant isn't perfect, even if your decoration is a little lumpy underneath it, it's not a big deal because real pumpkins are not smooth and perfect. What else do I want to say about this? So I think that is it. If you have, wait, I just ate something and I hope I don't have anything in my teeth. How embarrassing would that be if I had chocolate? Anyway, and I'm not supposed to be eating chocolate. I'm supposed to be on a diet right now, and Reese's peanut butter cups keep calling my name. Oh, Halloween. Anyway, I need to chill. I like to think it's all going to my muscles anyway. All right, let me stop. I think that is it for now. If you have any questions, leave them below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. I try to check my YouTube comments and questions once a day before I start working in the morning. And please like this video if you liked it. It really helps out my channel. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and you want to see more videos like this. And you can follow me on social media. I am on Facebook and Instagram, and I have my website. I will link all of that below. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you on